population of a country is a mosaic of different population groups that can be identified according to racial, ethnic, language, or migration status, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, as well as disability status. This presentation focuses on population subgroups related to ethnic, language, religious, and migration characteristics, and the relation between gender and these identified groups. Often, some population subgroups are disadvantaged in terms of social status, education, employment, wealth, and other social and economic dimensions. Even in societies where there is a favourable environment for gender equality, women in some population groups can face discriminatory behaviour due to the difference in expression and understanding of gender roles in their own community. These women are subject to a double disadvantage as minorities and as women. Simply looking at gender disparities in the total population of a country is not sufficient to fully understand the different roles that women and men have in society. For example, looking at unemployment in the UK in 2004, the total unemployment rate is relatively low, below 5%, with women having slightly lower unemployment rates than men. However, if unemployment is examined within different ethnic groups, a different picture emerges when looking at gender disparities. Differences in unemployment rates exist across different ethnic groups. Also, the rates of unemployment between women and men show a pattern of higher gender disparities that was not shown when just looking at the totals. To illustrate, not only are Pakistani in the UK almost 3 times more likely to be unemployed than all other ethnic groups, but unemployment rates of Pakistani women are almost twice those for Pakistani men. This means that Pakistani women are 4 times more likely to be unemployed than are all other persons in the labour force in the UK. For other ethnic groups, the unemployment rate for men is generally higher than the rate for women. It is important to note that gender analysis of ethnic or cultural groups is an essential element of socio-economic analysis. The study of the relationship between gender and ethnicity, culture, race, and/or other status risks being overlooked by gender advocates who focus only on gender disparities, and by population subgroup advocates who focus on the disadvantageous situations of certain ethnicities without considering gender. Statistics on gender and ethnicity are needed to address inequalities within and between population groups by raising consciousness and persuading policymakers of the need to readdress these inequalities in the respective communities. Gender and population subgroup statistics are also essential to monitor and evaluate the impact of policies and measures on minority women and men. As shown in a study carried out by the UNDP Regional Centre in Bratislava in 2004, in 9 countries in Southeast Europe, non-Roma persons are 5 times as likely to reach secondary education as Roma people. However, the percentage of Roma men who achieve secondary education is double the percentage of women. This demonstrates that not only are special educational policies needed for the Roma community, but within these policies, women should be particularly targeted. Measuring ethno-cultural characteristics with a gender dimension is complex, since this requires the availability of gender-sensitive data disaggregated by sex and ethnicity, language, and religious status, among others. While measuring sex of individuals is relatively easy, identifying ethno-cultural statuses can be more complex. Therefore, if sex disaggregated data are more widely available, data disaggregated by ethno-cultural status are limited. Within the ethno-cultural status, the availability of data disaggregated by sex is even rarer. The major challenge in measuring ethno-cultural characteristics is the political sensitivity of openly speaking about different identities. In some countries, there is a reluctance to acknowledge that there could be different treatments based on characteristics such as ethnicity, race, religion, or language. This can prevent public debate on the need to collect statistical data disaggregated by these characteristics. In some countries, it is also considered sensitive to have people reporting their status with regard to race, ethnicity, or religion. People may not wish to declare their affiliation, particularly when they belong to a minority group. Therefore, national statistical offices do not want to jeopardize the overall collection of data by including these sensitive topics in data collection. Given the difficult interpretation of the concepts and their political and cultural connotation, it may be difficult to identify actual meaning of respondents' answers to questions related to ethnic origin. In particular, persons belonging to segregated population subgroups may not wish to be identified as members of such groups because of the stigma attached to them. These personal perceptions may change over time, often depending on whether or not the socio-political environment of the country is safe or favourable enough for individuals to identify their minority status. Another challenge in producing data for ethnicity and gender is related to the fact that population subgroups are sometimes a very small proportion of the population. This is a particular problem for data collected through sample surveys, where sample size and sample design are crucial to determine the possibility of obtaining significant data for small groups. Producing statistically significant results may not always be possible in a survey due to the small number of people from population subgroups. Population censuses are a better tool to identify small population groups. However, the census is usually carried out only every 10 years, and it does not cover social and economic data in great detail. Administrative data can also be a valuable source of information on population subgroups and gender. However, ethno-cultural variables are usually not recorded in administrative sources, mainly because of confidentiality concerns. Another issue relates to data dissemination. Even in countries where there is a tradition of collecting information on ethnicity, social and demographic statistics are rarely presented and disseminated broken down by ethnic status. In these countries, it is difficult to have the necessary data to measure gender differences within the different ethnic groups. Given these challenges, what can we do to improve the quality and availability of statistics on gender and ethno-cultural characteristics? Collection of data on ethnic and cultural background can be successful only if the national statistical system creates trust with regard to the confidentiality of individual data, and more generally a positive environment for population subgroups. Involvement of communities of population subgroups along the entire data collection process is also a key element in ensuring that people feel confident to disclose their subgroup status and participate in the data collection. The self-declaration of respondents in relation to their ethno-cultural status is an essential principle to safeguard individual rights for self-determination and to encourage persons to report their status. Instead of pre-coded questions, the use of open-ended questions should be considered, with a view to increasing the perception of neutrality in the statistical system. In countries where the collection of data on race, ethnicity, religion or language is not possible because of their sensitivity, it may be useful to collect information on migration background as a proxy to identify minority groups. Information such as citizenship, country of birth, or country of birth of parents may be perceived as less intrusive while still providing information on ethnic background, particularly when ethnic affiliations are mainly due to recent migrations. Data collected through censuses and sample surveys should be used more extensively to describe gender issues across and within minorities. Where data on ethno-cultural characteristics are collected, individual data should be correlated by ethno-cultural characteristics and sex. Not only should composition of the total population by sex and ethnicity be presented, but also the main social and economic characteristics, such as education, employment, and income, should be cross-classified by sex and ethnicity. Information on methods used to collect and process information on ethnicity status should also be made easily accessible. In order to improve the availability of data on gender and population subgroups, oversampling of existing sample surveys should be considered for some areas or population groups. It should also be ensured that sampling frames adequately represent all population subgroups.